Hi everyone, delonewolf here, and welcome back for some more EVE Online. In today's video, we are going to take a look at the economic numbers for EVE Online for April. Should be a very interesting set of numbers, I think, because we of course have the industry changes that have been deployed on TQ during the month of April, and late March they were all announced, which actually led to like a very big rush on industry in EVE Online, as everyone wanted to still make as much as possible under the old system before things became more complex and more expensive. So if you want to find this information for yourself, just go to eveonline.com. Then you have a news link on the top left, which brings you to this page, and then you should be able to find the monthly economic report for April 2021, and that one looks like this. For people that are even more interested in this stuff and want to make their own analysis, you can download all of the raw data through a link here as well. But I tend to just, try to read the story depending on these numbers. And well, here it is. Let's see if I can make this one a little bit bigger. So here it is at the tail end, of course. We've got April and the beginning of May, and the red line is the produced, so the amount of production done in EVE Online. And you can clearly see here, late March, everything started to shoot up to an all-time high. In fact, you've got a massive spike. I think the bold line is like an average, and the I'm not sure if it's going to show too well on the video, but there's like a lighter line that's far more spiky. I think those are actually like more concrete data points. Not sure if it's going to be daily or weekly or anything like that, but just on the announcement you have this huge spike up to like a 6 trillion of stuff that was basically baked in the oven or put in the oven at one point, and then you had a massive spike as well, probably just before the patch was released, where everyone just tried to gather as much stuff as possible, put it in the oven, and produce as many, especially battleships, capital ships, super capital ships, and all of that. And so this created this lovely spike, you could say, for industry. And then though at the tail end you can see that for the averages we're down to pretty much the low point at less than 3 trillion ISK at the moment. But you also have the, I'm gonna say it's the non-averages that have just declined towards 2 trillion. And so at the moment what I've been doing is I've been mining, compressing, and preparing for potentially a bounce back, of course, because activity in EVE Online, while it's probably going down just a little bit, we can see that in destruction here as well. And even mining is starting to taper off. Once this huge spike in production has been absorbed, we should see a more balanced situation between supply and demand, and then hopefully on destruction we create like a more one-on-one interaction between supply and demand in price, with less redundancy, less in reserve. So especially a big battle in nullsec that would involve lots of capitals or super capitals would I think have a very big impact on prices across the board now. So we'll see of course how all of that works out. But this is of course the expected industry boom that happened when CCP announced the change that were coming, and then now we have the massive decline in production and thus also in demand for raw materials that is happening right now in the game. Let's go back down here and look for some other interesting stuff. Here is total valued by region. So Delft still number one in the month of April. The war is happening there, the Imperium against pretty much everyone else, you could say. There's just a lot of destruction that is still happening there. Then we get the Citadel and the Fort, so we definitely have some war deck stuff and some suicide ganking happening around trade hubs. That is still definitely the case as well, but the war is still responsible for a lot of destruction in the game at the moment. Then we have total mining done by region. It's still that Veil of the Silent nullsec region that is standing head and shoulders above anything else. And then next is Metropolis, the Forge domain, Sync Liaison. So then we've got HiSec, where mining is still very active. Honestly, it's going to become less and less lucrative, I think, since this seems to be Since this seems to be set on an ISK value, we should see a drop-off in the difference between high sec and then some of the other regions. Nelsec could really retake is there, but just because of how much titanium is dropping. Pyrite is trying to hold on. I'm not sure if it's going to do that. And well, Mexalon has gone down in value substantially, although relatively speaking, I think historically speaking, it is still decently expensive. But yeah, expect this to, in my opinion, go down a little bit in just the amount of mining done, just because it's expressed apparently in, I think it's ISK. So if that's the case, we should see some pressure on all of this after the boom. But yeah, Veil of the Silent, right? Generally speaking, I think it's fraternity that they're called in Asian community that is known for liking automation, also for being pretty hardcore. But let's not kid ourselves. There is botting in all likeliness involved in them being so dominant at the moment. NPC Bounties sort of confirming that situation. So Veil of the Silent again, twice the next region. CCP definitely look at it. I hope that they're doing that. I personally think that they are doing that. But you can't just squash every single bot whenever it becomes active right away. And so it's pretty obvious that they are having a bit of an impact on the market at the moment. In fact, I kind of want to go back to that mining one as well. One thing that we noticed in Eve Talk is how Zydrine has now dropped well below 1000 ISK, basically coming back towards that mega site that never moved away from 600 ISK. And I kind of think that this is part of the reason for that. And we have this strange reversal where null-sec minerals are now less expensive than a low-sec mineral, Noxium, that's still going for well above 1500 ISK. So part of the story is probably automation. Part of the story is just that, well, null-sec can be massively dominated and protected. You've got bubbles and all of that stuff, which create sort of a more secure place where massive amounts of mining are able to be done without being at risk of piracy and all of that stuff. Low-sec is really where the real risk exists, and so one of the bottlenecks, Noxium, is extremely expensive at the moment. Let's go down here for total production by region. The Forge still dominating. That is, of course, GTA 4.4, the largest trade hub in EVE Online. Feels kind of natural. Delve's still up there. The war, forces are being replenished. Lost ships are being produced. So that is, 16,000 billion ISK in production there. Definitely a lot of stuff happening there. Veil of the Silent really coming up there. I'm kind of curious, we don't have those details, but how much in capitals and super capitals are they still producing now after the patch? Well, if you want to get into that race, and you're newer to the game, you are going to have to go through the extra steps that are now required to produce these kinds of stuff, of things. And yeah, in value, this could really start to show up as being very big numbers all of a sudden as well. So Veil of the Silent up there, lots of mining, lots of ratting, lots of industry. They're definitely, pulling their weight as well. It's not like this is just one massive botting empire. You can see that there's just a lot of activity in Veil of the Silent happening as well. Since it's being translated into lots of industry, which I don't think botting, industry bots are a thing. It's a pretty passive thing anyway. Total market trade value. This one's kind of interesting too, right? The Forge, of course, still dominating. Here is Domain. So we get Amar as number 2, well above 50,000 billion. And I noticed one, there we go here. This is actually something that I don't often look at because it's just a lot of data, but let's take a look at this here. The bluest of the blue, Domain. So that ought to be Amar for trade balance by region, up 5,000 billion ISK. The Forge down 5,000 billion ISK. And so this month it really does look like Amar has been able to pull its weight and to become a pole within its region of high sec that has drawn in a lot of business and that has come at the detriment of JITA, it seems. So this is very interesting to me, and a sign that Amar is growing. And well, while the Forge has such a huge head start that I don't think it'll ever really fall, it has come at the cost of some trade balance on the JITA books. Very cool stuff. And that means that if we go to the trade market value by region without the forge, Amar with the domain region really standing head and shoulders above Dodixie, Saint-Liaison, which is where I'm doing a little bit of business. But honestly, right, I'm in Iona, so going to Jita is 12 jumps, going to Dodixie is 8 jumps. Most of my trips are to Jita, I'll be honest on that. Going to Amar, that's a completely different story, and so they are growing quite nicely. Then we get Delft, actually, a Nullsic region where the war is still ongoing. That's very high, so they've got lots of stuff there, lots of trade that's happening there as well, which is really interesting, right? If CCP could at some point really bring that nullsec sowing and then reaping dynamic going, it could be very interesting. It just shows how much potential there is in nullsec for becoming huge trade markets and huge hubs of activity. A part of the player base absolutely loves that and goes super hardcore. I myself am more of a high sec care bear, so I'm part of this metric, but the potential is obviously there for fully player built and run markets of quite impressive sizes, like here in Delft. And then you get I think Lone Trek, I'm not sure which one that is, but then Metropolis, Heimetar. So both of these actually form together the Minmatar trade. I think that one is growing a little bit as well. I think together they're now pretty much in line with what's happening in Dodixie. But Amar, again, doing really well, it seems. Then we have contracts, we don't need that. I think we'll go to some ISK stuff. So here is ISK sinks and faucets. We start at 1.330 trillion ISK and we end 1.337 pretty much. So no, actually a growth of 6 right here for ISK. So we're positive, but a lot of it is coming from just faucets. So stuff is coming online that creates ISK. Players have been adapting to all of these changes, I think, and the sinks, are what they are, but it's the active ISK delta that's still negative, minus 20 trillion. So yeah, we have been creating a lot more ISK than we have been sinking in the month of April. So the faucets, this to me feels like it's up because you still have a negative ISK delta. So that's a sign that activity is decreasing a little bit. We saw that as well in the destruction. That's actually down quite substantially while the war is still raging. It's definitely not throwing super capital fleets at each other anymore or anything like that. And so there's a little bit less activity in the game. It's a seasonal thing. I saw a couple of posts on Reddit, that we're down to below 30k on average. Honestly, it's something that comes back every summer in EVE Online, and on top of that, now we have this unusual circumstance, of course, where I do think big parts of the world are starting to release their real-life restrictions due to vaccination campaigns that are going and starting to pick up pace. And so all of that together, I do think we'll see a seasonal decrease in EVE Online activity. That when winter comes around, or if we're forced into another lockdown due to a variant or something like that, that we'll see a pullback for those numbers. But yeah, this time the summer slump could be a little bit stronger than what we have seen before, but we've seen that pretty much every single year. Then we have the commodity faucets, so sleeper components still head and shoulders above everyone else, and in fact in the Reddit thread about these economic numbers, it was pretty clearly stated by the players there, right, which is just a small subset, that yeah, C5, C6 definitely doing a lot of work here to create all of these sleeper components and potentially something for CCP to look at. Then we've got the overseer effect with a big spike that's tied to an event that CCP had done, of course, and so they're now in line with Triglavian stuff, which is slowly going up. And I think that is really still my feeling on Pogven, is that at first CCP tried this be Edencom, be Triglavians, and once you start to put in reputation, really strong barriers basically, where it's one or the other, you'll just remove a lot of players from that equation, because I, for instance, am not going to, I don't want to go negative to anyone really. I want to have the option of going into as much space as possible. So as long as I'm not forced to make that choice, I'm choosing not to make it. But I think now there is some content that allows you to basically either remain neutral or stay positive with ETH income and then work on your trig rep. And so slowly, you know, a part of the player base is finding their way into Triglavian space. And you can see here how over the last couple of months since the start of the year, Triglavian data has gone up. And maybe the Abyss, I think the Abyss actually has its niche, its place in EVE Online as well, and that may be growing in activity too. So here Triglavian data is going up. Triglavian ships are still extremely expensive though. Service fee breakdown, I don't think there's any major changes that we should get from those, but here are the top 10 sinks and faucets over time. So this is for ISK. And this one is pretty interesting as well, in my opinion. So here we have the ESS update, where players could all of a sudden rob the bank in nullsec, and we had this massive drop-off in bounties from Radding, which was pretty much a similar drop as what we had with the nullsec blackout, which is this this bottom right here. But now you can see we are slowly recovering, and the amount of ISK flowing in is you know, coming into range of the commodity prices again. So we also saw that in the amount of ISK being created, those faucets being able to increase the total amount of ISK in the game, despite the fact that we've lost ISK just in wallets. In general, the way CCP counts it. So this shows that bounties are starting to increase as well. And then we've got corporate reward payouts, which is for the Sasha incursions. Very interesting how this is very spiky, I would say, and in general the averages are definitely up as well, but it's not like it's just a constant thread up, which for instance for the bounty prizes, right, that just goes up in a pretty smooth manner. This one far more spiky. I'm going to say that it depends a little bit on where the incursions, Sasha incursions hit, and on some locations, you know, it'll be a slow pace, and on others, you know, there's going to be this gold rush to get all of these payouts. Insurance and agent mission rewards pretty flat here on this chart. And then of course for the faucets, so how do we lose ISK? We've got skill books are doing okay, pretty steady right here. Oh, actually not a lot, so they've gone down in price. I think that's the feature where CCP allows you to now just buy them directly for ISK. You don't always have to get a book. Skill purchases has, you know, these two together before the skill purchase one or this one. Yeah, exactly. Then we get the LP store, brokers fees, and transaction tax. Of course, the market is the tax from our central bank, from CCP. This is the way that they're taking a lot of ISK out of the economy. Overall, you know, a recovery in bounties. We will have to see what the keys for those banks, the reserve banks, are going to do to this activity as well. But overall, it is stabilizing, you could say. Couple more charts to go. Here is the money supply. So during April we actually still went down, but at the tail end in May you can see a little bit of a bump back up. So again, it's, I think, that recovery in bounty activities, probably also Veil of the Silent, right, where a lot more activity has gone up, that is starting to stabilize this. And then the velocity of ISK is still very low. So this is, you know, 0.4. You know, that number doesn't mean anything to me. I'm not, you know, that well versed in economics, but it's pretty obvious from this chart right here that the velocity is pretty low at the moment, which means that ISK doesn't change hands that often at the moment. A little bit of, you know, lower. I think especially you get an increase up until April, and then it started declining. I think the read on this is that here you had a lot of buying still happening, right? Everyone needs and wants as many minerals as possible to get that industry going. But once April hit, right, everyone is just focusing on producing, getting those reserves, especially in nullsec. I think big stocks of big ships is what has been built here. But then the trade started to decrease, and now of course we're gonna be in a pretty bad spot if you're looking for a lot of activity, because not that many players are going to just keep going at the same pace under the new industry rules. And then you probably have a decrease in demand for minerals, decrease in demand for yeah, for minerals, for the raw resources, and that is all going to decrease the velocity of ISK. And so yeah, a little bit of a slump, maybe even a summer slump here as well. And then here, of course, who is still king but is probably going to start to lose some of its feathers, the mineral price index. This is probably going to become its all-time high, unless CCP does some other weird stuff. But we have seen in Eve Talk that, of course, some of the minerals are pulling back. In fact, titanium below 5 ISK, I think it's going to look for a new normal, since you don't need that much titanium anymore, and a big pullback in Zydrine as well at the moment. So this mineral price index in the upcoming months should really start to go back down. Production price index, up to April, definitely going back up. So is this still like an old chart or something? Because we don't have the April thing itself. Interesting. So here we'll see. Maybe we'll have to see it in the next one, but this should pull back. And they full history, does this have April? Don't really see it, and you don't see the pullback in minerals just yet. So I'm gonna say that this is like not the right chart, lagging behind a month or something like that. But yeah, production spike here, that should be going down. Same with the mineral index at that point. And then down here, you've got even more detailed ones if you want to take a look at all of these for yourself. That starts to be like too complex and too in detail, even for me. So this is my general takeaway from this one. Activity is still all right, but there are some signs of declines, especially here, right? You can see that the war is starting to cool down a little bit since, let's actually go into the details, since destruction, which is the blue line, has gone down and is now basically at the lower end, below average, you could say. Mining went up together with the production boom, but is also starting to taper off. And this, of course, right here, this massive decline in production is going to have its impact on the mineral market and on the mineral price index, mineral prices, and all of that stuff, which could potentially be an opportunity for those that are still sticking around to grab some cheap minerals, to make some cheap stuff that they could perhaps later down the line or right now sell at good margins. And I myself, that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm mining a decent chunk, compressing as much of that as I can, hoping for a bounce eventually. And in the meantime, I'm looking for, what still has some profit in it to produce and to bring to the market, what has basically been forgotten amongst all of this industry, all of these industry changes. And yeah, that does seem to be munitions, modules, those types of things that haven't really changed. Well, they are looking at pretty good margins now that the mineral prices are starting to drop significantly. And that's going to be it for this video, guys. This is the monthly economic report for April for EVE Online. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, I'll see you next time.